Good morning. I'm Dr. John Keene, and I'm Secretary of the Board of Directors of Southern Public Power, located with our central offices in Grand Island, Nebraska. We're the largest of the rural public power districts in the state of Nebraska, representing 7 counties and some 25,000 different customer accounts. Our board is composed of 14 publicly elected directors, professional agricultural specialists, irrigators, and heavily invested in Nebraska's water, its agricultural economy, and its economic development. We've been working with TransCanada and the Keystone XL project for over 3 years now, as a pumping station for the proposed line will be located in Merritt County in southern service area. Through extensive review over the last 3-year process and our work with TransCanada, we have continued to remain steadfast in our support of the Keystone XL project, as we see it as a significant benefit to our electric ratepayers in southern, critical to development of energy infrastructure in the state of Nebraska, and we see the current discussion and debate as potential setting the tone for future development of energy infrastructure projects, including transmission lines and other critical energy. Our opposition today to LB1 stems from 2 primary points. First, we see that the proposed legislation attempts to separate the issue of safety of pipeline, which is under federal purview, from the routing of the pipeline. Under the current existing federal regulation, routing considerations take into account the interrelationship between the geology of the route and its implications in the construction, operations, and maintenance of the line. The Department of State's extensive environmental impact review and the statement as issued specifically addresses all of those safety concerns relative to groundwater, ecological considerations, and the construction and operational challenges of operating a pipeline in a sensitive ecosystem such as the Sandhills and over the Ogallala Aquifer. The executive summary of the EIS clearly points out and addresses each of these statements. To attempt to separate pipeline safety, a federal issue, from the routing, which are both inextricably interrelated, LB1 attempts to essentially create a distinction that is not possible and is simply in language only to maintain constitutional muster. Second, we recognize that LB1 establishes a secondary approval process through the Public Service Commission that is both redundant to the current existing federal process and we believe will be less extensive and effective than the existing federal process. The federal process addresses each of these issues as stated in LB1 and the concerns of the legislature in terms of preservation of Nebraska's natural resources. Furthermore, we recognize that an extensive review such as that done by the Department of State in the existing process cannot be accomplished at the state level. In addition, the federal process already has provided ample opportunity for state agencies and shareholders to express their opinions and weigh in on the process, one that has and has not been exercised by different state agencies over the course of the last 3 periods. We do recognize that today's hearing in LB1 is little more than a thinly veiled attempt at targeting the Keystone XL Pipeline, a very specific project. The conclusions with respect to the safety of the proposed route as well as alternative routes are clear from the federal review process and provide confidence to us as Nebraskans that the natural resource preservation has been a major criteria in the siting process, and we hope that utilizing legislation to delay and ultimately kill specific projects will not take place in Nebraska and send a very dangerous message to those companies who wish to come to Nebraska to do business, that politics, not science or fact, will affect their ability to conduct business in Nebraska. Thank you for your time and attention this morning.
Let me ask very quickly, Michael Watson from Consumer Energy License.
Thank you. Good morning. CEA strongly supports the Keystone XL Pipeline because of the economic benefits that it will provide both Nebraska and the entire United States. Endorses the State Department's finding that the project poses no significant risk to the environment and opposes LB1 and other legislation, both because they're designed to stop construction of the Keystone XL project and because we believe that they are unconstitutional attempts to change state law in an attempt to effect an ongoing regulatory process for a single project. This pipeline will create more than 120,000 jobs across the United States, including 7,500 here in Nebraska. Even more, the project will generate hundreds of millions in federal, state, and local taxes, create $20 billion in economic growth nationwide, and generate more than $150 million in government receipts for the state of Nebraska. That's a lot of money that will go to improving public schools, roads, and hospitals. The 700,000 barrels of oil per day that this pipeline will bring to the Gulf Coast refineries will be coming from places like Oklahoma, Texas, Montana, the Dakotas, and Canada, our neighbor, closest ally, and largest trading partner. It is not subject to violent revolutions like we've seen this year in Egypt and Libya. It cannot be used as a political tool like Russian and OPEC oil can. It is highly discounted from the prices we pay for oil from the Persian Gulf and Venezuela, and it will help drive down fuel prices for both our military and American drivers. These facts help explain why CEA, in conjunction with the Nebraskans for Jobs and Energy Independence, was able to submit more than 32,000 comments in support of the pipeline from Nebraskans to the Department of State during its recent public comment period on TransCanada's application for a presidential permit. As of this morning, the United States has imported over 3 billion barrels of oil since January at a total cost of over $312 billion. This equates to a total daily imports of more than 11 million barrels per day. To suggest exporter, because of the volume of oil delivered by Keystone XL, betrays a fundamental lack of understanding of U.S. markets, and suggesting that producers would send it 1,700 miles to Port Arthur, load it on a tanker, and send it through the Panama Canal to get it to the Pacific markets when there's a 500-mile pipe or rail routes that are already available is ridiculous. And further, other claims that we've heard that the importing 700,000 barrels of discounted oil per day into the United States markets is going to raise fuel prices, either nationally or here in Nebraska, is completely unrealistic. All right. Consumer Energy Alliance urges both the Natural Resources Committee and the entire legislature to cautiously approach any legislation which addresses oil pipeline siting, particularly legislation which seeks to change state laws to affect ongoing common carrier oil pipeline construction projects such as Keystone XL. The express intent of LB1 and other pieces of legislation that have been introduced is to force a change in the proposed Keystone XL route that TransCanada selected based upon both federal and state laws that were in place at the time they filed their permit application and are still in place today. Attempting to change state law to create a new permitting requirement for the project 3 years after TransCanada filed its application with the State Department is an unfair attempt to alter the rules of the game long after it started, and violates the intent, if not the letter, of the Constitution's prohibition of ex post facto laws. This is particularly problematic given the state of Nebraska has been directly involved in the State Department's environmental review throughout its 3-year process without once raising any objections to the proposed route. Further, given the fact that the State Department will need to conduct a new environmental impact statement for any new proposed route, which will restart a process that has taken over 3 years to date, it's safe to say that the actual impact of any legislation seeking to change the route will be to seriously jeopardize the project. I'd like to thank Barry and Nebraskans for Jobs and Energy Independence for putting this event together. Thanks.
I know we're running short on time. The session starts here in a little bit, and I want to make sure we get to a lot of questions. So I'm just going to ask a couple more speakers to come up. Ron Kaminsky from the Laborers, Business Manager, Laborers, Local 1140. He represents the workers who built the first Keystone Pipeline and will build this next one. Ron.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Kaminsky. I'm the Business Manager of Laborers Local 1140, based here in the state of Nebraska. On behalf of our members here locally, over the 500,000 countrywide and in Canada, the AFL-CIO, the National Building and Construction Trades, we're here in full support of the proposed Keystone XL Pipeline in its current form. I want to keep this very short. We train members to build these projects here. We built the first Keystone pipeline. We've built many other pipelines through the state of Nebraska and through the aquifer. This is very important. We have very high unemployment in the construction field, and we need to start putting jobs above politics. That's all I have. Thank you.
For the sake of time, I'm going to ask Robert Jones from TransCanada to join us lastly, and then we'll start with the Q&A, and anybody is eligible for the Q&A.
Good morning. Thank you, Barry, for inviting me and being here this morning. You've heard from the other speakers about the benefits of Keystone XL. You've heard about the important contribution this pipeline will make to Nebraska, to workers and communities along the pipeline route, and to the tax base in Nebraska. In fact, if approved, TransCanada will become the largest taxpayer in the state. Much has been said over the past couple of years about TransCanada and this pipeline. I appreciate the opportunity to advise you of the facts. TransCanada is a North American energy company. We own pipelines that have operated in the United States for over 60 years, and we've operated in Nebraska for the past 30 years. TransCanada is a pipeline utility, a company tasked with responsibility to deliver energy to millions of North Americans every day, 24 hours a day. Our responsibility to deliver that energy safely every day is our #1 priority. Our U.S. field operations are headquarters here in Nebraska, in Omaha, and approximately half of our employees are based in 33 U.S. states. We also understand and share the concerns that Nebraskans have about the Ogallala Aquifer and the Sandhills. We also understand the importance of other special areas throughout the state. Today, 15,000 miles of oil pipelines already carry oil over the Ogallala Aquifer every day safely. One of those pipelines has been in operation for the past 60 years. This network of pipelines transports 30 billion gallons of oil across the Ogallala Aquifer every year safely. The route selected, reviewed by Nebraska agencies, has the least amount of environmental impact. All other alternate routes were evaluated, 14 in total, 8 that impacted Nebraska. These alternate routes would require more land disturbance, cross more special or sensitive areas, impacting substantially more rangeland, forested land, agriculture land, and wetlands. No matter what activists and those who oppose the pipeline say, you cannot reroute the pipeline and avoid aquifers. That is a distraction to mask their real agenda, opposing the consumption of petroleum. The Ogallala Aquifer covers almost the entire state of Nebraska and 6 other states. And aquifers in general cover enormous areas across the country. This pipeline will be built to be safe by Nebraskans so we can strive for energy independence. Thank you.